So good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this very special AMA on Women in Gainesville Innovation. A couple quick housekeeping notes before we get started. As already mentioned, please go ahead and mute yourselves if you have not already done that. We will be recording this for posterity, and recordings will be available through startGNV's YouTube channel in the future. We do encourage you guys to go ahead and turn on your cameras during the AMA so that our panelists can see who they're speaking to. And then afterwards, welcome to continue that conversation and we can actually see each other. A little bit about our event format. AMA does stand for Ask Me Anything, which means that after a short introduction to our guests, we'll be taking questions from the audience on Zoom. Participants, if you have any questions, please go ahead and submit those into the Zoom chat so that we can ask them for you. And before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, OP Software, Hutchison, 352, Infotech, Feather, Santa Fe College, Better Me Productions, and Trimark. Now, I'd love to introduce our guests. Thank you all for joining us today to talk about diversity in the innovation ecosystem. Victoria Liu is the founder of Bippo, which is an app that partners with local restaurants and provides customers with a seamless food ordering experience. Helena Cowley is the president and CEO of Oxidien Pharmaceuticals. She has over 10 years of experience in pharma, medical devices, and food, mainly in the entrepreneurial startup environments. And Jennifer Harrell is the interim assistant director of UF Innovate, the hub, where she manages day-to-day operations in order to facilitate a supportive and encouraging environment for aspiring entrepreneurs to grow. And last but not least, hopefully, I am the host of tonight's AMA. My name is Michelle Brownstein. I am a startGNV board member and the Associate Director of User Experience Research at 352, which is a digital product growth and development firm here in Gainesville. Now, as questions from our viewers hopefully are trickling in, I'd love to kick us off by letting our guests talk a little bit about what they do and about their experiences in Gainesville Innovation. Victoria, I'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience as a young woman and up-and-coming auditor jumping into the startup community and founding Bippo? Tell us about what that journey was like for you.
Hi, everyone. Just want to say it's such a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. I love to see you all, hopefully one day in person. To answer your question, Michelle, starting off as a woman entrepreneur is very difficult, especially in the tech world. When I went into the accounting profession, I did not anticipate at all totally like pivoting to starting my own business. So it was a huge jump in my life. I had to actually like tell the accounting firm that I had a full-time offer and that I wasn't going to show up. And it was actually funny because they then offered me a higher salary just to like make sure I didn't leave. And I still had to walk away from that and start a business here in Gainesville. But I want to say thank you for all the support in Gainesville, because I wouldn't have been able to advance my company and grow as a woman entrepreneur in this town without the support and the mentorship that I've gotten in this community.
Awesome. Helena, tell us a little bit about starting Oxidien as this lean, mean entity and where you're at today.
Sure. Well, I am currently the founder and CEO of Oxidien. And as many of you may know, it's actually a spin out. So we started it in 2019 when we spun out of Captozyme, which was also a company founded in Gainesville. And the reason why we spun it out was because we sold that company. So that was, in a sense, a success story that has a very interesting backstory, I should say, because we grew that business in a slightly different way than what you perhaps would do. So Captozyme was a contract development and manufacturing organization, but also a drug development company. And we really grew that through SBIR grants for our drug assets. So we were developing oral enzymes for hyperoxaluria. And then in parallel, we were offering services, and it was really to sort of support our drug development in the beginning. But then that grew into sort of its own large company because there was so much need, and the services that we were offering were very attractive. There was a market for it. And so it's an interesting story, and it ultimately led to two sort of successful businesses. So I spun it out in 2019. Within Captozyme, we had gotten it through first-in-man studies, so we had conducted a clinical trial. Personally, I was heading up sort of the technical side on the drug development side. And in regards to the development business, the service business, I was organizing more on the business side. So the financial systems, the HR systems, but I stayed away from the technical. I was only handling the technical on the drug development side. So it made a lot of sense to me to spin it out and continue. Oh, I'm sorry. Perhaps there's some type of overlap.
We have, well, we don't know.
There we go. So, so it made sense for me to spin it out because we're addressing a really large unmet need. We had some really exciting data from our clinical trial. And so now I'm raising funds to continue into phase 2 studies. And 2020 was an interesting year to be, as a first year of spinning out. And I think also in Captozyme, we were always several people, or even from start, we were 3. So you always had, or actually I should say 2, because one of the co-founders moved to China quite early and was sort of going back and forth. But you always had sort of one other person, which I think if I would suggest anything, it would probably be, it is always easier with a co-founder. So it's been an interesting 2020, but now we have some exciting traction and we're actually in negotiations right now. So hopefully we'll be able to close some funding so we can progress the project faster. But I'm really excited to be here, and I really appreciate everyone's time to sort of to listen and ask questions. Thank you.
We're happy to have you. And definitely sounds like a really exciting time for you. So excited to hear a little bit more about everything going on with the work that you're doing. Jennifer, as the interim assistant, well, I can speak, I swear. As the interim assistant director of UF Innovate, you've worked a lot with women like Victoria and Helena. Tell us a little bit about your work and how you really support these amazing innovators.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I'd like to say how honored I am to be here with Helena and Victoria. I've gotten to watch Helena's success over the last 4 or 5 years, and Victoria and I have gotten to know each other over the past year. So they're definitely the definition of what keeps me going on the really tough days. So yeah, I do manage the day-to-day operations of the hub, where we currently house 55 startups who actually employ close to 400 team members. So our days can be very busy, but it's very rewarding. We have an awesome team at the hub and Sid Martin, our sister incubator. So every day is a blast. Literally, our motto is GSD, so get stuff done. As the clean version. No 2 days are ever the same. So my day fluctuates between helping our CEOs with an array of requests or connections. I can be analyzing financials, drafting legal documents, planning or working an event, helping our team with various problems, or even coming in after hours for equipment and building emergencies. Since we are a mixed use incubator, we have entrepreneurs working in app development, agriculture, biotech, engineering, aerospace, supply chain management. Those are just a few. And our program has 3 main buckets: facilities, resources, and mentorship and advisement. Most of our entrepreneurs stay in our program for 4 to 5 years before they graduate out to commercial space. And I like to use Feather as an example. They graduated and stayed in the innovation district. They're one of our success stories because we are in the heart of the innovation district. And it's a great place to work. We can easily walk to the 4th Avenue Food Park. I walked to the stadium today, actually, on my lunch break. You can walk downtown. And then we have the new food truck park right across the street. And I think one of my favorite things is you can actually ride your bike up the 6th Avenue bike trail and go to Afternoon or Cypress and Grove and the new Superette wine shop, which is really cool and hip and new. And it's actually owned by 2 women. And we also have the Collaboratory for Women Innovators in our building. They're part of our umbrella organization, UF Innovate. And so they offer various resources, mentorship, and training opportunities that are structured towards women entrepreneurs and innovators, or women who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs and innovators. That's just a little bit about me and the hub.
That's awesome. Yeah, it definitely sounds like you've got this perfect incubation. It truly is an incubator, right? It's like imagine like when you're in school and you incubate the chicks, right? And then they grow up and you set them free. So
Absolutely.
that's really amazing. You guys really have it down to a really nice science there to help support these startups. Having been in tech in Gainesville for the last 12 years myself, I can definitely appreciate the difficulty that some women encounter when they're working in tech. I've had a number of female friends and colleagues who found it really challenging finding opportunities and good support systems because they're typically dominated by men. And as a result, they felt really a lack of belonging to those communities in those existing support systems in our area. So as we continue talking, I'd be really eager to really learn more about how you've overcome not only a wide range of challenges from working in innovation in and of itself, but especially with your experience working as women in innovation, because I think it has a very unique experience, at least in my experience. So I have a few more questions I want to follow up on, but I do want to just remind everybody, if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop those into the Zoom chat, and we will make sure that we keep track of those and ask them for you. So I have a general question for all of you, I guess, just to kind of continue kicking us off here. And this is a question for all of you guys, did you have any mentors that helped you find your path, and how did they help you most? Helena, let's start with you. Putting you on the spot.
No, I was hoping that I was going to get an opportunity to think about it, but actually, that was, there's a lot of mistakes that I've made, and I think one was to not sort of actively seek out mentors earlier, actually. It's extremely important. And I think in the early years, we were so focused on getting things done, and that's a good thing. And we were fairly capable. And I mean, we were very action oriented. So we just got things done. And if we had a question, I mean, as you guys know, I mean, information is really available for everyone, right? So it's not that difficult to figure things out. And we had that sort of attitude. But I think that it could have served us even better to have mentors really early on. And it's really in the later years that I started seeking that out more. And I don't know, it helps to have a different perspective. You don't know what you don't know. And so you have to have those conversations with people that have more experience. But I'm trying to think of a specific example. Oh, well, there is one mentor that I have now. And it's funny because, so we used to talk, over the years, just here and there, because he's also local. So we would run into each other, and he would give me tips here and there based on what we were talking about. And every time, a few months later, perhaps a year later, I would realize, oh my gosh, he was right. I should have just done what he said, So now he is mentoring me, and we are working together, and I'm so appreciative of that. But my mistake was to not sort of engage or engage him as a mentor much, much earlier in a sort of frequent way. I'm gonna.
Perfect timing. Victoria, how about you?
Well, I was kind of the opposite of Helena. My first step into starting my business was I have to find someone to help me. Because I was a student at the time, I did not know how to even begin. And a little bit backstory about me, both my parents are entrepreneurs, and they have a total of 4 businesses together, but they refused to help me on my business because they were so against me changing my profession from accounting to becoming an entrepreneur and starting my own business. So I really had to look elsewhere in the community here in Gainesville. And the first place I went to was the Entrepreneurship Center at UF. I went straight to the office. I was like, I need to talk to somebody in tech. And they directed me to a fellow guy called James Gibson, which I believe he's the president now of startGNV. Is that correct?
Yep.
Congratulations to him. Yep. So I immediately went to find as many mentors as possible. I think at one point I might have had like 5 or 6 at one time. It's just the fact that like you can hear from so many different experiences that every single person has gone through. You really, it's like you learn so much because you hear from their mistakes before you make them. And that's where I feel like I learned the most. And even, you know, sitting right here in front of us, Jennifer, she is one of my mentors. I often go to her. I'm like, Jennifer, what do I do about this? How can you help me? And we set up a time, we talk. It's, I feel like anybody who is more knowledgeable, you know, most of the time I know all these amazing people in this community, and they know so much more than I do. I'm still fairly, I would say, young. Although my birthday is in like 2 weeks, but I still feel like there's so much to learn, and everybody that knows a lot about business, they're all mentors to me at the end of the day. It could come from just a restaurant owner that I know who she's had 20 years of restaurant experience. I go to her and ask her questions. And even someone in like random in the grocery store, she has all these experiences working at a grocery store that I've never worked at. I ask her all these questions. Yeah, everybody's a mentor really to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, we can learn so much from a wide, diverse set of skills, right? And like, just because you're doing one thing doesn't mean you have to seek mentors in that thing. Having a wide variety of input and perspectives definitely helps build your knowledge base, and you know, to Helena's point, lets you see what you let you learn what you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know until somebody points it out. Jennifer, so as a mentor, I guess, since you are a mentor as well, but I'm curious if you have been on the flip side as a mentee, what has helped you on your path, and how that's helped the most? And then on the flip side, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your entrepreneur or your mentorship as well.
Yeah, sure. So I actually never really had mentors until a couple years ago. And then I was lucky enough to have 2, one male, one female. So I'll mention the female, Mary Shaw, who just retired as the assistant director at Sid Martin. She has been my lifeline over the last couple years. Really taught me, I think the hardest thing for me to learn was no one is going to ask me to sit at the table. No one is going to ask me to join. I was raised Southern, so it was like, don't speak unless you're spoken to type of thing, which is just not the right mindset in this industry at all. So learning how to ask for a seat at the table or just go sit at the table, but to do so still in a professional way. Mary definitely has helped me navigate that. And Victoria, that's awesome that you called me a mentor. I'm still fairly new in this as well. I've only done this for about 5 years. I have worked in many different industries, and I am a little bit older than I look. So I love that. I don't know that I call myself that, but you know, mentorship to me, or helping anybody else out, is providing the experiences that I've been through, any answers I know or connections I can make. And then there's a lot I don't know. And then it's just a matter of, you know, ending that conversation or phone call and then getting busy over the next hour, day, or next couple days to find some other type of resource or person that can help. That's to me the biggest, that is mentorship. And I also agree with you, Victoria, that you can be mentored by anyone every day. My whole team teaches me something every day, and all of the CEOs and entrepreneurs in our space as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so we have a participant question from Julia Thomas, and her question is for everyone on the panel. How do you all see the innovation ecosystem evolving in the coming years as Gainesville strengthens its role as a hub of innovation? I'm actually going to toss this back to Jennifer, since you have been working so much with so many different innovation so many startups. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on this first.
Do you mind repeating it one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. How do you see the innovation ecosystem evolving in the coming years as Gainesville strengthens its role as a hub of innovation?
Well, it seems to be evolving very rapidly. You know, a few years back, a lot of things seemed siloed, and there seems to be a collaboration happening, and a lot of different organizations coming together, working together, learning from each other. There's definitely a momentum. We were kind of afraid during COVID that some of that was going to end. We did lose some entrepreneurs, but everything has kind of come back now and moving forward. And it seems to me it's a very positive outlook, and there's a lot of momentum, and it's a matter of all of us staying together and continuing to push it forward and continue to grow our local ecosystem.
Awesome. Helena or Victoria, do either of you have anything to add on, to build on? Good.
Well, I think it's a work in progress, right? I think for companies that are fundraising in Florida, it can still be challenging. I mean, I think it's the amount of capital that goes to Florida versus, you know, other regions in the U.S. And it's not dependent on just one thing. So I think it's moving in the right direction. Because the more companies that establish here and that are successful here, there will be an attraction of more capital and more investment here, and it may be easier then to sort of attract the right people here as well. So it's going to be a process, and I think it has already started, and it's only going to get better. And then again, you know, my experience of fundraising may also be very, very different from, like, if it's, well, it depends on the type of company as well. I mean, if you're in pharma, it's quite different perhaps than if you're in medical device, and, you know, depending on where the money goes. So, but yeah, I think it's moving in the right direction for sure, based on just all the work that people are putting in the States. So I think it's a good trend.
Awesome. All right. Victoria, a question for you from Christine. You have a large social media following with an engaged community on Instagram. How have you used your personal brand to grow your business? And what do you think entrepreneurs should do to build that kind of digital community?
Oh, wow. Thank you, Christine, that you think I have a large following. I really don't. Well, I run several social media pages. One of them is Eat Gainesville, which is a food blog in a sense, and my business Bippo is in the food online ordering platform. So there is definitely some correlation through Eat Gainesville and Bippo, where a lot of my clients on Bippo would migrate to Eat Gainesville, or I would meet a lot of potential clients and they would eventually be on Bippo. It's kind of ironic because I never like planned for this to happen. It just eventually kind of like merged together. It's very, very exciting to see actually as it unfold over the time, because still right now I feel like I'm still in the middle of trying to figure out how I can utilize it best to support the community here, because I work with a lot of local restaurants. They don't have a lot of a large budget for marketing. They don't have a lot of the resources that they would need to make online digital marketing successful. And this is where I felt like, okay, I have them on my online app with Bippo. How can I ensure that I'm bringing them more clients? And this is where I've been thinking, okay, Eat Gainesville has a lot of followers in the food industry here in Gainesville. I can channel that towards bring them clients on Bippo. In terms of what do I think entrepreneurs should do to build that, it's a lot of time. It's very hands-on. Most of the digital marketing I personally go to each individual restaurant. I know the restaurant owners. I eat the food there. I spend a lot of time connecting and networking with the restaurants and making that personal relationship with them, so that when I showcase their food on my social media, it's a very authentic. It's very, it showcases who I am, my personality. And I think that really helps if there are other entrepreneurs looking to start their own social media pages. It is a lot of work. I've thought about giving it to someone in my company to work on it, but I actually do it from like the bottom up. I schedule the post, I take the pictures from the bottom up. Yep.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this one from iPhone Mary. I'm assuming that's not your given name, but with all the current women programs available today, I'm assuming this is for everyone. Do you consider yourself a good CEO or a good female CEO, or do you think it's tougher for you as a female than your male counterparts? say, Helena, do you want to start?
Sure. If I consider myself a good CEO, I think it should always be a work in progress. I think you're always growing, and I think you should always view yourself as someone who needs to continue learning. And in addition, if you are growing a company, hopefully the company is changing and growing, and you would grow and change with that. I have to say, because that's what I experienced, and perhaps I was a little bit surprised about that as well, like within Captozyme, that so when we grew that company, we changed so much as individuals. So from beginning to end, it was actually not, it was not only growing the company, but the company was like changing us. So I think you have to have a mentality of always learning. In terms of being female, I actually never think about it. I mean, I never think about it. However, like with that said, I try to stay really knowledgeable around common bias because we know that it exists. I mean, I'm technically trained, I'm scientifically trained. So we know the studies that are out there, and it is true, there are biases. And you just have to be aware because, I mean, the one that comes to me top of mind is, that women, if they are assertive, would be more likely to consider it aggressive and in a negative view than a male counterpart. And I have experienced that, not necessarily like those two types, not aggressive, but in a different way, where I realized that sort of my behavior was perceived a certain way. And I don't believe it would have been perceived that way if I was male. And so I think it's not really something I think about, but I think you have to be knowledgeable around how people may perceive you because everyone's human and they have different biases.
So question from Hamid for everyone. As you start your businesses with innovative ideas, how much of a concern is who you trust as partners or employees and ensuring your IP is safe? How do you handle each, or how do you each handle this? Does anybody want to jump into that?
I could start, and then Victoria, because it looks, Victoria, like you're thinking, so I could start. And then, how much of a concern is who you trust as partners, employees? Oh, I think it's a really big deal, like who you involve in your business. And I was listening to an interview with the CEO of a large biotech company. He mentioned, and this was really impressive, I can't remember his name now, but he interviewed like every person up to the 100th employee. And now they had sort of several hundred, but that was pretty impressive. But I think it is really important. And I hope, if I get the opportunity to grow to 100 employees, I hope I will, or I would want to do the same thing because it is super, super important. Ensuring your IP is safe, that is also incredibly important, especially in my industry of pharma. And so early on, actually already in 2009, we engaged an intellectual property counsel. So you have to early on engage professional services for really important things.
Victoria, did you have anything you wanted to follow up on that?
Yeah, my answer is actually like the opposite of Helena's again. In the beginning, when I started my business, I was actually really cautious. I was like, no one can steal my idea. It's great. Like, I don't want anyone to, start something like this. I don't want competition. I even had a mentor who is a lawyer. He helped me file was a trademark, a patent, everything, just to make sure like my technology was safe. And then when I approached several potential clients, instead of like pitching them straight on, I'm like, wait, hold on, sign my confidentiality thing before we even get started. And then over time, I realized like, why am I, wasting all this time keeping all these secrets? Eventually it's just going to go out there and people are going to know about it. Right now, I'm like the exact opposite. I'm just like an open book. I just kind of when I go to a potential client, I tell them, hey, this is my software. Here it is. You like it or you don't. And I've had people kind of like been interested in the idea. They do it on their own, but really I like competition. I like a challenge. If you can do it better than me, great. And then in terms of like keeping some very, very, very internal like IP with employees, I honestly think my policy, at least in my company, is like we're a very open book. If I trust you as an employee, I'm going to trust you with whatever we have. I wouldn't hire someone I didn't trust to begin with. So that's my experience.
Great. It's so nice seeing kind of how you guys contrast the way that everything's kind of worked out for you guys. It gives a good breadth of, the possibilities for people, and that there's no singular approach to any of this, right? Like you're going to come at it from different places and you're going to end up in slightly different places. But
well, I do want to add, because I don't disagree with Victoria. I think and it depends on perhaps which business you're in. So if you're in like drug development, obviously it's important that you ensure that your intellectual property is safe, but that you do that through patents. So in other instances, it may be trade secrets where you have to have completely different processes, and where more of a process that actually involves, actively removing information from people's access. So, if you have it patented, then it's sort of not a problem and you can share that. So I think it definitely is very industry dependent, but I agree with what Victoria was saying for her industry, certainly.
Awesome. Thank you for adding on there. Okay, so question from Ashton, and this is again for Helena and Victoria. How did you find co-founders and build your team?
My answer is very short. I don't have a co-founder. It's just me and myself and I. But building my team, I think it's a lot of just trial and error. It was just over time, you meet people. I'm constantly meeting people on Gainesville Network. I always go to various places and always open to networking and meeting people, even on LinkedIn or social media. Always, I get all these like random DMs on my social media. So as you come across people in your life, you start to really get a good sense of, I like this person on my team, and you start like vouching for them, and other people will also reach out to you. It's just the energy and the vibe. You just have to kind of like, for me, it's been just go with the flow.
I completely agree with that. And then I think actually this is probably a question also for Jennifer in terms of building a team. So I'm gonna just say that I have found, because I'm always looking for, these like pitch events or areas where you can network with people, conferences. And in some cases, when they ask you what you're looking for, they're actually asking if you're looking for a co-founder. So I think when you're actively looking for it, you will be able to find the avenues where that's sort of part of the theme of the conference, or where people can help you sort of get matched up. But I've never had to necessarily, I don't have a co-founder now. And with Captozyme, I joined as the first employee. I was actually not a founder technically, and I like to sort of set that record straight. I joined in 2011 and they started in 2009. But yeah, I agree with Victoria. Building your team, like you network. And I actually early on got the recruiter account for LinkedIn. And I just, as soon as we had a position open, like with Captozyme, I would search everywhere. And LinkedIn is very, very powerful that way. So that's another tip. But Jennifer, you have also built a team. So
yeah, a little different from Helena and Victoria. But I think what really works for us is understanding what's really important to you in work ethic and personality. Skills are important, but you can always train a skill. But somebody's personality, you can't really change. And so, these are people you're going to spend more time with than you are sometimes even your own family. So it's super important to understand yourself so that you can understand what you want and what you need and how your team's going to be able to work together. And even to the previous question as well, I think Being open, as Victoria and Helena both said, it depends on the industry and the business. But once you have things protected that you need to protect, training everyone and being as open as you possibly can really helps people feel invested in the business. And that's what helps everybody, work together, get things done, and move everything forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot to say about a sense of ownership over your work. We have that at 352, where we're working on products for clients. We're an agency, but being able to have a dedicated team to a project really allows us to feel like we own it, a little piece of it, at least 3 months at a time. So that ownership goes a long, long way. I'm going to make a shameless plug, if I may, and just say that startGNV, if anybody is looking for talent, or if anyone is looking to join in one of these initiatives or join one of these projects, we do have our jobs portal on startgnv.com/jobs. So welcome everyone to take a look and a poke around there. We have, I think, 31 jobs currently listed. So there's a lot out there for people looking for opportunities. You may well find a good match and a sense of ownership for yourself there. I have a question from, let's see, let me scroll back down, Oshubi. And I think I'm going to actually target this one at you, Jennifer, and he asks, how can we grow more women entrepreneurs and startups in Gainesville?
Send them to the Collaboratory for Women Innovators, please. They have awesome mentorship. They have awesome programming. They have awesome networking. Join startGNV. Visit your local SBDC center. Visit SCORE. Call the Innovation Navigator, which is Elliot Welker, who is my counterpart at Sid Martin. He can navigate you to the various organizations that you can join. Own your awesome. I think that is so important for females to build each other up and help each other own our awesome. It's all about confidence, I think, and maybe a lack thereof. So yeah, send them to the Collaboratory, call the Innovation Navigator, network.
Awesome. Jennifer, one more question for you. This one's from I'm Phone Mary. Being over an incubator is like being a CEO of your own company, as well as the 50+ companies you house. However, sometimes that experience is actually overlooked. How do you deal with it in dealing with, how do you deal with it in dealing with your incubator's CEOs?
Not sure if I understand exactly the question.
Yeah, so being in the incubator, let's see.
How do I deal with my experience being overlooked? I'm trying to. Yeah,
maybe, Mary, if you could maybe add some more context on
Sorry,
there.
I'm not exactly sure I get it.
No, that's okay. We'll circle back. So Mary, if you could add a little bit more context for us.
Sorry, Mary. I think that's Mary Shaw. Shout out to Mary Shaw. That's my mentor. Maybe she's putting me on the spot here. I'm not sure.
All right. So Jennifer, a different question for you. We see that men typically dominate the startup space. About how many companies work out of the hub, and do you see that more of these companies are founded by men or women?
Yeah, so we have 55 companies in the hub right now. We have 8 that are either female founded or ran by a female CEO.
Okay.
And that's growing. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. That's about 12%. So I say that's pretty good. That's a lot better than when I started 5 years ago. So yeah.
Cool. So while we wait for Mary to potentially follow up on that one, I'm going to circle back to Victoria. So sometimes people can really oversimplify the effort required to create something new. A food delivery app on its surface seems pretty straightforward, but I can imagine there's a myriad of technical challenges as well as business requirements that made the creation of Bippo a challenge. Can you speak to some of the unexpected obstacles that you encountered in the process of creating Bippo?
Well, there are a lot of challenges, but technical wise, there has been quite a few. And this is just speaking personally because I do not come from a tech background. So I graduated with an accounting background. I don't know how to develop an app. So there, right off the bat, I had to immediately go look for a software developer. I had to go look for a lawyer. I had to look for just anyone who can know what the process of starting a company was. I had no idea what comes into a tech company. Specifically for me, with an app, you need to learn how to do the design. There's a front end of the app, and there's the back end where there's all the code. I'm pretty tech savvy, I think. So when I started my company, I actually designed my app myself just to like save money. I was bootstrapping, not willing to spend 20 grand. Then when I designed the app myself, which, you know, in a sense, usually that's a graphic designer, UX UI designer does that. And then they give it to the back end developer, they develop the back end, and they put it together, and that's an app. I looked everywhere for a developer. I had to go to like companies in India, companies in China, companies in California just to find a developer. Luckily, my mentor, James Gibson, referred me to a friend of his, which is Jonathan, and he was kind of like a freelancer software developer. Now he's my full-time developer. He's on the team. He's my lead developer, and luckily we've kind of just worked as a team. I designed it, he makes the back end. That's it, and that's where Bippo came together. But it was kind of like a mess in the beginning. I didn't know where to start. Yeah, I mean, I would say in the beginning when you start a tech company, you may feel like a very overwhelmed because software is always changing. You hear about AI and machine learning and 5G, like all those things are constantly changing. Technology can be easily outdated within like, you know, even a week or 2 days or something, you know, at the rate that we're moving. So I felt like sometimes even after I created something, oh, this is already outdated. You got to let's start all over. It's very hard to keep up with the up and coming tech. So it still has its challenges, and I still face it every day, but you got to just stay on top of it.
Nice.
And I wanted to add something real quick, because I think if there's people in the audience, you know, that are thinking about, you know, starting a business, I think a lot of times, you know, if you look to, you know, other people in your environment that perhaps have started businesses or have been have seen some success. I mean, it's easy. I do this all the time. I put people on a pedestal. And I think the bottom line of what I'm trying to say is that really anyone can do it. And I think sometimes, or most of the time, it's a matter of just taking action. And you can be so overwhelmed with sort of your overall goal. I mean, you have a vision, you know that you want to, you know what you want to achieve, but it could look so much larger than, I mean, you just become paralyzed, right? Because you don't know what to do next. So I think it's a matter of identifying, and a lot of times it's a matter of starting researching things. It's a lot about just reading up on things as a first step. But whatever the problem is, you can always identify the first step and then just do that. So just take action and don't think that you can't do it, because you know, everyone really can do it. And everyone is also struggling with something. I think, you know, I certainly struggle with a lot of things. And, you know, everyone has sort of something that they're working on, right? So if you have a business idea, just identify what it is that you need to do and find the people around you that can help. And that's going to be a good start. And don't think that, you know, other people don't have issues, because everyone has some type of issue.
Indeed. Speaking of issues, burning question from our interior here at the AMA is around how you all perceive, or how you all manage to navigate family planning and work-life balance. For a lot of women, and particularly in tech, because it is so male-dominated, it can be difficult for people who are wanting to start families, whether they're men or women, really. But women in particular, having to take time off, you know, with their little ones and that kind of thing, anticipating when you might want to do that, and just more generically work-life balance. I'm curious if any of you have any thoughts that you'd like to share on balancing just your day-to-day life and then the larger life planning that that many people do.
I just want to step in really quick and just say how badass I think Helena is. I remember when she was running Captozyme in the hub and then had her baby, her precious baby, and would sometimes bring the baby in the little baby carrier to the hub. And I don't think there was anything more powerful to see than that. So that's all I wanted to say. And I'll step out. I think Helena probably has a lot of.
Oh, I mean, it's so funny. I remember when we brought Channings, our youngest one, to the hub, he would sit in on meetings. And then now afterwards, it just seems really weird because we had a small team at the time, but he would sit there in his stroller. We certainly can't do it with the second one that we have. She doesn't have the patience. But in terms of balancing, I think number one, especially and perhaps unfortunately, at the time of, currently, for a woman, it is really important, like how your spouse is, right? And how you share things at home. I think that is really, really important because I think that it's still the case that a lot of times women have to take more responsibility for children and things at home. And I hope that will change. So who you're married to or who you're with will be really important, to be honest with you, because they have to support your endeavor. And then the second thing is just, outsource everything that you can. Like, obviously, if you have children, it's really important with family time, but as much as you can, you just need to outsource if you can. Because there are things that needs to get done that perhaps you don't have to do. And so you just have to prioritize. If you have the ability to get help, then I think, because that's an issue with women as well, potentially, that we have a hard time asking for help. So we need to ask for help from our spouse. We need to ask for help from our network as much as we can.
Yeah. And I love that point about how much women take on. I mean, certainly there's a trend, and you're finding more and more stay-at-home dads and more men being highly involved. But with coronavirus, it really kind of set us back a little bit. It's been a really big burden put onto mostly women as their kids have had to stay home and that kind of thing. So I love your point about, having a good partner who's really your teammate and helps you build a future together where, the burden isn't on just the mom in that situation. So I love that. Thank you. Cool. Okay. So I wanted to follow back around to Mary's question, and I'm going to read this, and I apologize if I butcher this. So hopefully this makes sense when I read it. As with several of the questions above directed to CEOs, which in my opinion includes anyone running an incubator, you're often not recognized as one, though in your position, handling 50 plus companies as well as the incubator program should give you this qualification. So Jennifer, I'm pretty sure this is for you. Do you find that you're constantly having to prove yourself?
Yes, that's true. But I also, the only person I'm competing with is myself. And every day that I go in, I just try to be a better version of myself. So I probably unconsciously do things to continue to prove myself. But part of being in an incubator is that you're coachable. And someone who comes into our program that isn't coachable, we're not going to renew you after a year. And that does actually happen. So it's a relationship. In fact, every CEO signs, in addition to their lease agreement, a master relationship agreement, which says how we're going to get along and how we're going to work together. And so I think that's kind of how I handle that and how I deal with that. And I just continue to stay positive and move forward. And I really am there for the entrepreneurs. So with having 50 entrepreneurs, maybe there's some I talk to more than others. Maybe there's some that I spend a little bit more time with than others. But yeah, so that's what I would say to that. Thank you for clarifying that, Mary.
Indeed. Thank you, Mary. I'm going to go ahead and pose this hard-hitting question from Lauren. Helena, what is your favorite model of Volvo?
Oh my gosh. Someone has done research, or perhaps that was in my bio. I don't have a favorite model. I don't think, I'm a little bit sort of sentimental, and, that's a really old brand. So perhaps I have to say it's the one we had when I was growing up, which was like, perhaps it was like a 740. It's super, super old. But I think you still see it on the roads, I think, because they just make really good cars. So,
okay. See, it truly is an AMA, asking anything. So I'll follow up that question with something a little harder hitting. I'm curious, Helena, about your background in entrepreneurship and how it really helped with creation or spinoff of Oxidien, and what lessons you brought with you in the creation of the new venture.
Okay, hold on. So the experiences in Captozyme, how that has helped in the spinoff. Mm-hmm. That was the question?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well, besides, the obvious that, that we spun out a lot of intellectual property, in terms of the lessons, well, the first thing that comes to mind is that the environment now for me is very, very different from what it was in Captozyme. So whatever I learned there is not perhaps as applicable. But one thing that was a really big lesson to me when I was, so I was the CEO of Captozyme, and in hindsight, I didn't really understand all parts of that job. And what I mean with that was, and I have to be a little bit kind to myself because we were a really small team. So we were wearing a lot of different hats. So like every day was just like, drinking out of a fire hose, like craziness. And so just to survive, like you had to get a lot of things done. So you couldn't really think about other things that were really, really important, such as the culture building, which is super, super important. And it requires a lot of presence. And for me, the biggest mistake, I think, or the biggest learning, because we were at the peak at one point, we were about 25 people, and I could get so overwhelmed with the things that needed to get done. So I wasn't very present. And culture building is really in the nuances. It's not in, doing an exercise around the mission and the vision, even though that's part of it, right? But it's in the little things, and it's in the dialogues that you have sort of every day with your team. And that was, a big mistake that I later on, I realized, and I wish that I could have known that, at that time. I don't think I was terrible, but I actually felt like I was lazy almost when I was walking around just sort of chatting with people, because my mentality was so like getting things done that I did not consider, my role in the culture building. So I think that was a big lesson.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, so we have one last question for everybody. I'm going to give you 30 seconds speed run here. Last question for all three of you. What is the best piece of advice that you've received, either professionally or personally? And Victoria, I'll start with, you're kind of looking around. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. So I'm going to let you guys volunteer. Who gets to go first? Just raise your hand. Okay, Jennifer, please.
I'll go. Just supporting our entrepreneurs every day, all day. I'll go first. I would just say the best advice I had was just be you, be yourself, be confident, know that you know what's best for you, and go with your gut, and that's all that really matters. That's what I would say.
Nice. Helena, Victoria?
Yeah. Now I'm all stuck on that one because I completely agree with Jennifer that because I think it can be challenging, and sort of tying it back to the advice of getting a lot of mentors as well. Sometimes it can be challenging to, I think, especially as a woman, because sometimes we are so used to we want to do a good job, right? So if we have people telling us do it this way, we tend to perhaps listen too much, to certain sources. We have to listen to our gut, and that comes back to feeling comfortable in, your decision making and actually appreciating your own experiences and valuing those experiences and realizing that you have a lot to give, you have a lot of value. And actually that is probably the best advice. So my current mentor, he told me, number one, get a coach. so I did that. And he was the one who emphasized, you have all these experiences. That is a lot of value. You have a lot of value. You can make the right decisions and just listen to your gut. So I think, yep, Jennifer, that was good advice.
Nice. Victoria, how about you?
I've been thinking, but I think it just comes down to, and I get this from all my mentors. They always say to me, "It's okay." And this typically is followed by when I say like, "Oh no, this happened today. What do I do? I don't know, blah, blah, blah," like an awful day of chaos. And they come back to, "It's okay." Just, and then you just keep going forward. You'll figure it out. Because I think at the end of the day, we all live different lives. We all come from different backgrounds. We experience different things, but that's okay. And it's okay. And we'll keep going forward and we'll figure things out together. We're a community. We're all here to support one another. And I think the best advice I can give back to everyone here is that it's okay. We're going to be all here together. And if anyone here today is inspired or have any questions, I'm sure all of us are here to support you. And if you're having a bad day, it's okay. We're here to support you. That's the best advice I can come up with. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. It does. Thank you. And I'm going to throw in my unsolicited suggestion here, which is that ultimately the greatest advice or the greatest piece of information anyone has ever given me was that most people suffer from imposter syndrome. And I always thought this was just me. And so it was a great moment to realize like a lot of people go through this. This is really common. The most brilliant minds probably have imposter syndrome. And it's a matter of pushing through it and continuing on your path and figuring out how to take yourself to the next level without beating yourself up. So, all right, that wraps up our AMA for tonight. Thank you all for coming this evening, and a special thank you to all of our wonderful panelists. It's been great getting to know you all a little bit through our Zoom discussion today. We'd love to see all of you again at our upcoming event. We have one coming up called Women in Tech. And this is going to be a really amazing speed networking event hosted by UF Innovate on the 30th. I believe that's going to be done over Zoom or something along those lines from 6 until 7:30 p.m. on the 30th this month. If you're a female entrepreneur and want to ask questions about your business to female leaders, including a couple of our amazing panelists and board members, this would definitely be a great chance for you to do that. The link is available in our chat, or you can register at womenintech21.eventbrite.com, or you can keep an eye out for more information on the startGNV Facebook page. So thank you all again for coming out tonight, and we look forward to talking to you all again soon. Everybody stay safe out there. Bye all.